All right, so we have one more presentation before our first refreshment break. Our last speaker of this segment is Emily Parker. So Emily has a background in marine science education and communication and is specialized in marine debris efforts and marine conservation in Latin America. She has a particular affinity for sea turtle conservation and has spent her year at Scripps dedicating research to that effort. She's an avid diver, surfer, and world traveler and hopes to continue her career in sustainable fisheries management. So Emily was one of the first people, I think, to zero in on her capstone. It had this sort of perfect mix of, well, two things that I see, really, sea turtles and Central America. And then I would also say the human dimension and attitudes and perceptions from local communities. And I think that, I know that allowed Emily to sort of pave the way and be a trailblazer for the cohort when it came to IRB approval. And I don't know how many of you know what that is, but that's the kind of approval you have to get if you want to actually study humans and talk to humans and ask them questions and try to draw conclusions about other communities with that information. So she was able to really navigate that very expertly early on. I think she started traveling down to El Salvador in the fall. Very early on, she had pinned down what she was going to do. And it's just been such a delight to see the way that, she took on a lot. I think any of the things, she has at least 2 capstones nested into this project, and either could have been fantastic standalones. But it's been a real delight to see how far she's come over the course of the year and how she's contributed to the cohort in that way. So please join me in welcoming Emily Parker.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha. That was a wonderful introduction. As Samantha mentioned, I'm going to be talking to you today about sea turtle conservation. Sea turtles are iconic symbols of the ocean, and they've been revered by humans for millennia and hold enormous significance in cultures and traditions around the world. And to us, sea turtles are symbols of a healthy ocean. But in some other nations, they're a vital source of income and even nutrition. Yep, I said nutrition. In communities in Southeast Asia and Central America, people have been eating sea turtle eggs for centuries. And in El Salvador, people known locally as tortugueros have collected and sold sea turtle eggs to meet this demand. However, about a decade ago, this practice was made nationally illegal. Now, tortugueros have turned to community hatcheries as a means of making a living and conserving the species. I had the opportunity to travel to El Salvador this past fall and to get to know some of these incredible men and women. I'd like to take a moment and allow them to tell you their story with a video.
conservación de tortugas marinas inició ya por el 2004-2005. Actualmente estamos trabajando con alrededor de 100 tortugueros con los que realizamos actividades de recolección de huevos de tortuga marina, de conservación de la especie a través de la incubación y liberación de los neonatos. Para nosotros inició como un esfuerzo en vista de la necesidad, ¿verdad?, de hacer algo para poder cuidar la especie o las especies de tortuga marina que nos visitan.
empecé de esa temprana edad no por el trabajo, sino que con mi papá me gustaba ir a recolectar, entonces y fui aprendiendo y ya con la edad que tengo, ya con él no voy a playar, voy solo, pero cuando ya empecé a ir yo solo ya podía hacer el trabajo. Es importante por la conservación de la tortuga marina, para que la especie no se vaya a extinguir y la podamos obtener, tal vez no solo para nosotros, sino para nuestros hijos, el futuro de mañana. Otra es que es un ingreso que nosotros como tortugueros tenemos. Aquí no hay una fuente de trabajo que podamos realizar, que digamos vamos a ir a ese lugar y vamos a pedir trabajo y de ahí los van a dar trabajo, no. Entonces la recolección de huevos de tortuga, o sea el trabajo de la tortuga es lo que los mantiene en la temporada.
Ya que sabemos que es una de las especies que está en peligro de extinción a nivel nacional y a nivel mundial. Cada año, cada temporada vamos viendo que los recursos son pocos, se van limitando.
En realidad, cuando yo empecé a tortuguear en estas playas de aquí de esta costa, ver salir de ahí de la punta del manglar a la bocana 100 tortugas a mirar, noche a noche se veían 100, 90, 95, 50, sí, ¿verdad? Pero poco a poco fue disminuyendo.
Entonces nosotros estamos trabajando en el tema de concientización a nivel poblacional, pero también estamos trabajando el acompañamiento que les vamos a ofrecer nosotros a estas personas, a estas familias que dependen por el extremo de pobreza que hay dentro de algunos sectores. Sabemos que ellos en su forma de sobrevivir también.
En este año se plantearon algunas acciones para poder disminuir la presión sobre el uso de huevos de tortuga marina. También implementamos un proceso de formación para la implementación de pesca limpia, pesca responsable, porque todos nuestros recursos tienen un enlace, son parte de una cadena. Entonces empezamos a comprender la importancia de esta cadena, ¿verdad? De esta conexión. Para nosotros es muy importante este proyecto porque viene a contribuir al ecosistema, porque viene a mantener sano el medio ambiente, por ende nos mantiene sanos a nosotros, porque estamos garantizando que este recurso o que esta especie se mantenga ahí, porque sabemos que detrás de nosotros hay otra generación que lo va a necesitar y porque también estas actividades generan ingresos a las familias. Sabemos, y yo lo sé con certeza, que si no seguimos apoyando en estos esfuerzos, habrá menos pesca, habrá menos playas sanas, habrá menos oportunidad de hacer turismo, va a haber menos oportunidad de ingreso económico.
So, as you've seen, the coastal communities in El Salvador are pretty dependent on these hatcheries for their income. You may be asking why this video ended with a call to action to support this conservation program. This is because these hatcheries are very financially unstable, and they don't always know how much money they're going to be receiving from their NGO and federal donors, or if they're even going to be receiving any money at all. This is why I decided to conduct a research study in this area. I traveled to El Salvador for a second time, and I partnered with two local nonprofits, Asociación Mangle and Ecoviva, to investigate the conservation program and the viability of the hatcheries using insights from the tortugueros themselves. We had a lot of research questions for this study, so I'm only going to go over a few of them today. The first of my research questions was to determine how the tortugueros in our study region feel about conservation and why they feel the way they do. My second question was to dive a little bit deeper and to try and determine what the drivers for conservation awareness are among the sea turtle egg collection population in our study region. And my final research question is to try to figure out whether or not this hatchery program is actually financially viable into the future. To find the answers to these questions, I developed a survey for sea turtle egg collectors and used their insights to conduct my research. The region I focused this study on is Bahia de Jiquilisco. It's a large bay located on the southeastern coast of El Salvador, and it's home to some of the most important nesting habitat for sea turtles in the entire country. The survey was distributed to 6 different study sites that correspond with 6 hatcheries along the coastline in this area. I distributed our surveys by hosting events at each of these hatcheries, and in total, I surveyed nearly 140 sea turtle egg collectors throughout the region. The respondents were asked about their egg collection activities as well as their thoughts and feelings on sea turtle conservation as a whole. From these surveys, I discovered some things that my team and I didn't really expect. One of the most interesting trends I saw was an overwhelmingly positive response when asked about general feelings on sea turtle conservation. In fact, I didn't see a single negative response. That's pretty incredible. However, I did see a wide range of reasons as for why this population feels the way they do about conservation, as you can see from this word cloud, which was made from their open-ended responses when asked, "What are your feelings on sea turtle conservation?" We see words like income and future, conservation in the environment, and even protection of the species themselves. But the biggest word you see up there is good. These communities feel very positively towards sea turtle conservation. But I didn't just want to know how they felt about conservation and why. I wanted to understand what the drivers were for increased conservation awareness. So what I did was I broke the respondents up into 2 different groups based on their answer patterns to questions like these. Those 2 different groups are the highly conservation aware group and the not highly conservation aware group. I then compared these 2 different groups against 10 different variables to see what things might be predicting increased conservation awareness among this population. What I found was really interesting. I discovered that the demographic variables that I suspected to play a role in conservation awareness, things like political party or religion or family size, they really didn't seem to have much an effect. I only found a couple variables that might be drivers for conservation awareness in this population. Those 2 you can see on these graphs here. In the top left corner, we see the average number of years that a sea turtle egg collector has spent collecting eggs in the 2 different groups. And then in the bottom right corner, you see the average number of nests collected in the 2 different groups. As you can see by these graphs, the average number of years spent collecting turtle eggs and the average number of nests collected are both higher in the highly conservation aware group. In fact, they're statistically significantly higher. So what does this mean? It means that experience collecting sea turtle eggs may be a predictor for the level of conservation awareness among this population. And egg collectors who are spending more time collecting eggs and participating in the conservation program may have a higher level of conservation awareness. This information could help to improve the conservation awareness building elements of the hatchery program into the future. My ultimate research question was to determine whether or not this program is financially sustainable for the future, even through times of hardship. When I first designed this survey, I thought that I could figure all of that out with just this one simple question. If your hatchery ran out of funds and couldn't pay you, would you still donate sea turtle eggs? I thought that if I got enough people to say yes to this question, then of course the hatcheries could run on their own because people would be willing to donate their time and their eggs. But what I found was not at all what I expected. 96% of people said that they would be willing to continue to donate, essentially working for free. This made me realize that I needed to reevaluate what this result really means. I thought, even if this community is extremely willing to donate eggs, are they actually able to? I decided to take a closer look at financial dependency and how dependent these communities are on this resource, and can they actually give up that much income? Here's what I found. This chart shows a breakdown of the percentage of annual income that my respondents were receiving from egg collection. The lighter blue segments are receiving a smaller percentage of income from sea turtle egg collection, while the darker blue segments are receiving a larger percentage from egg collection. I also calculated the total income that egg collectors are receiving from all of their jobs, and I found that on average, a member of this population is only making an average of about $545 a year. And on average, they're receiving half of that income from sea turtle egg collection. These communities are extremely financially dependent on this resource. And so does willingness to donate really make a sustainable program? Based on these results, I'd have to say no. These communities are feel extremely positive towards conservation, and they're even willing to give up income to continue conserving the species and this resource that they depend on, income that they might not even have. But this program can't survive without funding, and we've recently learned that 5 of these 6 hatcheries aren't going to be funded next season. Continued efforts are needed to support these hatcheries, but also to research and implement appropriate alternative income solutions for egg collectors within these communities. This conservation program is about so much more than just conserving sea turtles. It's about protecting the communities that depend on them. And by supporting these communities, this precious resource can also be protected into the future. I'd like to thank my committee members, Anna, Jeff, and Ernie, for providing their expertise and guidance throughout this entire process. And I'd like to give a special thank you to 2 of my field research team members, Jose Maria and Douglas, without whom this project would have been absolutely impossible. Thank you very much.
Fantastic job. Really, really nice presentation. And the film was just phenomenal. You had a lot of interviews of Spanish-speaking folks in your film. How did you do that? Did you do those interviews yourself? And did you have a translator?
I had a lot of help. So Ana Luisa, my chair, who's in the audience, helped me conduct all of the interviews in person. And then I speak Spanish, so I was able to go back and translate them, but I definitely had a lot of help, not only with the interviews, but also with the survey responses. There were a lot of colloquialisms that were very difficult to understand, and I would be known to be running around our like dorm buildings and asking people, what does this word mean? So I definitely had a lot of help, and it was a lot of translating. But yes, I conducted the interviews along with Ana Luisa's help.
Hi, really quick. Excellent. I loved your presentation,
Thank you.
Emily. How much money does it cost a year to run a sea hatchery? Sea turtle hatchery.
That is an excellent question. And I think it really depends on the hatchery. It depends on how much foot traffic they're getting. I know that there was one hatchery that was operating on about, I think it was a $10,000 grant. Is that correct? $20,000 grant. So the hatcheries run on a lot of different grants. Some are receiving money from local NGOs. The one I was just describing is actually receiving money from Lush Cosmetics. That's where they got their grant money. So they were able to run for about half the season on $20,000. So it does vary from hatchery to hatchery, but that's about what a hatchery needs.
It's a fascinating place, and I really enjoyed the story and learning more about it. One question I have is about you've got finances for the tortugueros. Mm-hmm. How much of it is linked to the finance, and how much is linked to community-based food security, the harvest of the turtle eggs? It's probably a little of each, but if you where is it?
That's an excellent question. So the actual consumption of sea turtle eggs is technically illegal in the country. So while it used to be much more of a diet staple, it's not so much anymore because it is illegal. I'm sure there are still people that still collect them and bring them home and eat them, but it's not a commercially viable source of income anymore. So I think it's far less of a diet issue and much more of an income issue now than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago.
And income for conservation.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So the income it's for conservation, and it's also, I mean, these communities are really quite dependent on this resource. One gentleman that I talked to, as you might have noticed in the video, he said something extremely poignant to me, which was, we can't just go to a place and apply for a job here. That doesn't exist. So during the nesting season, when fishing is low, when the opportunity to collect crabs and collect shellfish is very low, this is the one thing that the sea turtle egg collectors sort of have to feed their families.
Sorry, I have a quick question. Since I have the microphone already. So at the end of your presentation, you had mentioned that the majority of these hatcheries don't have funding for next season. You've just produced this beautiful video. What are you going to do with it? Because I think that you could probably find funding using your video.
I would love that. That was actually one of the reasons that I made this video. It was not only to tell this incredible story of these amazing people, but also to hopefully generate additional funding in the future. So this video is going to live on hopefully 2 different websites, on the websites of the 2 organizations that I partnered with. That's Ecoviva, which is an organization that's based here in California, and then also Asociación Mangle, which is based there in El Salvador. And I would love if this video was able to garner some extra support. As of right now, I think, Anna can correct me on this, but I think only 1 of the hatcheries is actually planning on opening for the season out of all 6 of these, or out of the 5 that aren't receiving funding for next season. So I would love if this were to help, and I'd also love to increase ecotourism using this video. Support doesn't have to be in the form of, here, let me give you a bunch of money. It's also going down and supporting the project with time and participating in hatchling releases and that sort of thing. So that's something that the communities would love to see an increase of, is ecotourism. They've seen some wonderful results of using ecotourism in other Central American countries. So I'd love to see this video garner support in that way as well.
Sorry, one more question.
You mentioned ecotourism, and you talked a little about it in the film. What do you think is a sustainable option for the future of sea turtle conservation in this region? You've seen other places and how they've managed the resource. How do you think we can do it in El Salvador?
I think that ecotourism is definitely possible, and I've seen it. I used to live in Costa Rica, and it is extraordinarily successful there. And I think that El Salvador has the tools and has what it needs. It's just something that needs to have a little bit of more attention put on. I think that things like attending sea turtle hatchling releases, these are things that people really want to do. And in where I used to live in Costa Rica, people would pay all sorts of money to come and live at a hatchery for a week and participate in these programs because people are really interested in this sort of thing. I think that other programs that I've seen, and another part of this project that I didn't even get a chance to touch on was an entire other set of data analysis that was to determine the best location for a protected beach. I've seen in other countries where protected beach programs are also extremely successful. So I think that could potentially be a great partner with ecotourism, having a protected beach program and having more ecotourism in the area. I think those 2 things together will help alleviate some of the financial stress on these communities.